What is up? This is the Working Investor. In this video, we're going to talk about why I dumped AIPI. This was the second largest holding in my portfolio. What I like about it, what I don't like about it, and my reason for dumping it. As always, nothing here is financial, tax, legal advice, or any sort of advice. This is purely for fun and entertainment purposes only. So my main reason for dumping AIPI is because in this year, you have the luxury of seeing the downside market and then upside market. And even if you look year over year, you could see the market was peaking towards the end of last year. And then the beginning of this year kind of went down. And then we had Liberation Day around April went down. And then since April, it's been on an uproar. So looking at different market cycles, I'm comparing my holding. And it's very hard as an investor to, it's easy to fall in love with your assets and feel like you're married to your assets. And it's very hard to keep objective and keep an open mind. And I've heard people say, hey, I don't think AIPI is outperforming pretty well. And I had to look into it myself, and I'm coming to the same conclusion. If you look at the 6 month chart, because some of the funds came out in the past 6 months, if you compare AIPI to the Qs, because I look at AIPI as a tech-focused, AI-focused ETF. I'm not really going to base it off the S&P 500. So I'm going to use the NASDAQ as a benchmark. I understand that it does cover calls, and I understand that it would probably not outperform the NASDAQ necessarily, but if you compare AIPI to QQQI from NEOS, which is more diversified, it basically is on all the Qs. So it has about 100 underlyings under it. And you can see that QQQI outperformed AIPI by a little bit. AIPI 16.12%, QQQI 16.28%. You can go ahead and compare it to GPIQ in the middle, and you could see that pretty much GPIQ outperformed it as well at 17.38%. And you could see obviously the Qs are outperforming all of these at 20.42%. And then you can have there's Nest Yield out there. There are other funds out there that give you dividends. And there's EGI, which gives about 24% dividends, and it has given out around 24% annualized dividends, and it's giving you dividends plus it has a hedge built in because it has protective puts. It covers a portion of the portfolio with protective puts. So you get growth, you get dividends, high dividends, and you get protective puts. You get some hedging involved as well, and you outperform the Nasdaq, and you way outperform AIPI. And then, comparing, the natural thing to compare AIPI to would be GPTY, because GPTY is kind of in the same space with, AI technology. And that thing has been a beast. That thing has returned 31.44%. And it pays somewhere in the mid 30s in yield, like 35-ish, 34 to 36% yield, somewhere in that range. So it's giving you a nice dividend distribution, relatively NAV flat. I've actually been up on my NAV with GPTY. And then you can also compare it to EGQ from Yield Master, Nest Yield. And that thing I think pays about 5%. It has paid 5% annualized in dividend distribution. These EGQ, EGI, they pay monthly, but this thing has a beast of growth, but it doesn't have the hedging involved. But the point is, there are other assets out there that do provide income that have better dynamics than AIPI. And you got to look at the whole race, but if you look through it, you could see somewhere in the year, you could see the AIPI, when the market was down. I'm going to show you a portfolio visualizer to show you the Sortino and Sharpe ratio. But AIPI, you can see when the market was down, AIPI didn't give you any hedge. It was hit the hardest with the market. And when the market crawled back up, it did a lousy job, capturing the upside. I guess at one point it slightly outperformed QQQI in the past 6 months. Here it outperformed QQQI and GPIQ, but then eventually, they performed AIPI, and AIPI is in the bottom. So why would I want to be in a more focused thematic fund that's underperforming something that's even more diversified? Let me show you this portfolio visualizer example. So we're going to go ahead and compare AIPI to QDVO from Amplify ETF, which is also a little bit more focused. They do about a 9% yield, but they have an amazing NAV appreciation. They've showed that they can do that. And we'll use the benchmark of the Qs. And we're looking at a timeline from September of 2024 to August of 2025. So about almost about a year, or about a year, because it's the end from the beginning of September to the end of August. So a rolling year. And if you started off with each of these with 10K, you'd end up the furthest ahead with the QDVO at 12,401. But even if you did the NASDAQ, you'd have 12,000. And like look at the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate, only 6.16% versus Amplify's 24% versus the Q's at 20%. Look at the standard deviation. The higher the standard deviation, the more risk. So it has less risk supposedly than the Qs because I guess it has option income that blunts the volatility, but it has more risk compared to the middle, which is Amplify's product of 13.62% deviation. And you can see the maximum drawdown as I showed you earlier, that the 12.21% maximum drawdown. So it has a worse. It gets hit harder than the Nasdaq and QDVO, and the CAGR, the compound annual growth, is worse. So you have a fund that takes a lot more, you know, volatile, rough, landing on the downside and doesn't really get a chance to take off. And if you look at the Sharpe ratio, it's horrible. The higher the Sharpe and Sortino ratios, the better it is. These are measures of risk-adjusted return. And Sortino ratio is a modified Sharpe ratio, risk-adjusted return relative to downside fall. And you can see in the middle, which is QDVO, it has a 1.1 or greater is actually considered good. Below one is not the greatest, but if you're below zero point 0.5, it's getting really bad. So 1.33 is for QDVO, so it has the best risk-adjusted return. The amount of risk you take, are you getting a fair return? Not always is more risk means more return. A lot of times you take on more risk and you don't get more returns. You have to be strategic of what kind of risk you're taking. So the QDVO is 1.33 Sharpe ratio. On the right, you can see the Qs at 1.02. And on the left, you see a measly 0.18 for AIPI. And this is showing you a 1 year rolling year. So I did not like the horrible, poor risk adjusted return. I don't feel like I'm getting a fair return for the risk that I'm taking. Let's take a peek at the holdings of AIPI to give you an idea of what they hold. So you can see their top holdings is Palantir, CrowdStrike, NVIDIA, ARM Holding, IonQ, Datadog, Intel, Micron, Super Microcomputer, Qualcomm, and they have the right, according to the prospectus, I think they could reconstitute quarterly and rebalance monthly. But taking on these type of asset risks and not getting a good bang for your buck, it doesn't seem like a fair trade-off for me. So if you're wondering what I did with the proceeds of AIPI, I broke it down like this. I built up a position in EGI. 25% of the proceeds of the AIPI liquidation went to EGI. Another 17.5% went to QDVO. 17.5% went to RSS. This is a pure growth play, no income. This is basically stacked risk parity, which I'm a big fan of. 10% went to TDAC, the new Tap Alpha ETF on the NASDAQ. 10% went to EGGS. And 10% went to GPTY, 5% went to QQQI, and then 5% went to GPIQ, I should say, GPIQ. So that's where the proceeds went. I mean, if you hold this fund, I don't think it's terrible because, I mean, if you look at year over year, it has a 19.6% total return. If you're trying to beat the S&P 500, it looks like it's beating the S&P 500 year over year, where the VU is 16.9% and this is 19.6. So it's almost 3% greater than the S&P 500 over the year, and you can see that the most of the time it does outperform the S&P 500. So if that is your benchmark, if that is your goal, and you want to have income, then so be it in total returns. But for me, I like to have a little bit. I see a lot of other contenders out there, And the time I invested in this fund, there was not so many things out there or out there for a period of time that I could actually evaluate it and backtest it. So now I have the luxury of being able to backtest some funds, and there are new funds out there that try to do things a little different. So I'm constantly always looking and evaluating my holdings to see if what I'm doing makes sense. I feel like it's a healthy exercise. Just for fun, I'm gonna put in FEPI, and I actually was shocked to see that FEPI has outpaced AIPI. Let's take a look. It has not outpaced AIPI in the 1 year, but if you look at the 6 months chart, in the past 6 months, FEPI basically beat the race in the past 6 months. So it sounds like, it reminds me of like horses. A lot of times, like, the horses are racing, and at the beginning of the race, one horse is in the lead, and then later on in the race, a different horse is in the lead. So the question is, who's going to be the winner in the end? So a lot of times, what I try to do is to have some clarity through all the noise, is I try to see which fund is in the lead most of the time. So with Seeking Alpha, you could just click on the underlying and you could see the nice color and you could see which one is outperforming the majority of the time. So that gives you an idea of which one is outperforming the majority of the time. It looks like, I want to say that FEPI seems like it's started to outpace AIPI or match AIPI very, very closely. Anyways, this is the Working Investor over here. I hope you guys have a wonderful trading week. Let me know what you guys think about AIPI. Like I said, I do believe there's a use case, but nothing here is financial advice. All the best, people.